For the longest time, I was longing for love, for validation, and for someone to look at me and say that you're enough. I still remember I used to look like this back in school. And looking at it now, I think that I was kind of cute. But back then, my thoughts were completely different. When every other girl was either getting a haircut, looking amazing, and actually had people being interested in them, I was just there, somewhere in the back, feeling invisible, and feeling like love was probably not something meant for me, and that I just wasn't that girl. Cut to today, where I'm living in Melbourne with someone who has loved me for who I am for the past 5 years, and who I proudly now call my fiance. But here's what I want you to know. I didn't feel worthy because I found the love of my life. It's the opposite. I found the love of my life because I started to love myself. Because I stopped chasing love and started creating it within me. I realized that all this time the problem wasn't the way I looked, how I dressed, or how interesting I was. The real problem was that I didn't give myself the same love, kindness, and appreciation that I so freely gave to others. But when I did, everything changed. Self-love is an absolute game changer. And if there's one thing that I want you to take away from this video, it is that the most important relationship you'll ever have in your life is with yourself. But here's the thing. I used to think previously that self-love was something you either had or you didn't. That some people were just naturally born with confidence, and there were others, like me, who were meant to struggle with it. But I was so wrong. Self-love isn't just about expensive self-care routine or posting "I don't care, I attract" on Instagram, or actually even making people chase you. Self-love is in fact like health. The more you practice it, the stronger it gets. And guess what? It is completely backed by neuroscience. And that is exactly where things get interesting. Because you know that when there's science, there's a formula, which means there's a defined way on how to get to it. And that means that self-love isn't something that you just hope to feel one day, but something that you can actively create in your life. So if you're ready to rewire your brain for self-love and start treating yourself like the badass that you are, let's get into it. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm Sim, and today we're talking about self-love, the neuroscience-backed habits and mindset shifts that actually help you build it. Everything I'm going to share with you today is rooted in science and is something that I have actively applied into my own life. These are today's video milestones, and as usual, go grab your notebook and your drink and imagine I'm holding your hand, if you'll allow me, as we walk through this. Because if you're searching for love, it starts right here with you. So let's get into it. Let me start by saying that self-love means different things to different people, and that is completely okay. But there's one thing that I've noticed is often misunderstood. A lot of people think that you either have self-love or you don't, like a fixed trait that you're born with. But here's again the thing, that self-love isn't just about treating yourself to nice things. It's actually much deeper. It's a biological process that happens inside our brain. What I mean to say is that everything psychological is also biological. How you feel about yourself is not just a random thought, but is actually tied to your brain chemistry. Your brain either supports self-love because it's producing the right chemicals, or it struggles with it because those chemicals are out of balance or depleted. And that's what I'm going to talk about next. Self-love is essentially tied to our self-image, or how we view ourselves, which is a direct result of our neurotransmitter activity, neural pathways, and brain structures all working together. At the core of self-love are three primary neurotransmitters, namely dopamine, oxytocin, and serotonin. And each of them plays a really important role in how we evaluate our self-worth, regulate our emotions, and also connect with others. So let's talk about what actually happens in your brain when it comes to self-love. Because like I said, self-love is not a fluffy concept, but is something that is wired into our brain through chemicals and neural pathways. When we experience love, whether platonic, romantic, or even self-love, our brain releases a cocktail of feel-good chemicals. Like I mentioned before, the main ones are serotonin, dopamine, and oxytocin. These are the same chemicals that flood our brain when we are falling in love, experiencing kindness, or even bonding with someone else. But here's the interesting part. You don't need external love to activate them. Your brain can release the same feel-good chemicals by experiencing self-love, but only if it is trained to do so. Let's start by talking about dopamine, and you probably would have heard about it before. It's known as the motivation and the reward chemical. Basically, dopamine makes you feel excited or accomplished when you achieve something. Think of it like your brain's pat on your back. So when the brain is experiencing self-love, dopamine is released internally, which means that you feel good about your own efforts regardless of what other people say. Let's say you complete a workout or accomplish a personal goal. The dopamine kicks in and gives you that, yes, I did that kind of a feeling. But here's where things get wrong. When your brain is deprived of self-love, the dopamine regulation decreases, and instead of producing it internally, you rely on external validation and external people to give you the same amount of value and self-worth. This could be in many forms. Maybe it's seeking likes on social media, getting validation from your partner or from your friends. And here's another problem. When you don't get that external validation, your dopamine levels drop even further. Have you ever been in a situation where you sent a text to someone and didn't receive a reply? Or you posted something online and didn't get as many likes as you expected it would? Then you get that I might not be good enough kind of a feeling. That's just low dopamine. And over time, if your brain starts relying on external validation for dopamine, it starts to create a pattern where your self-worth is then always tied to external validation and what other people think of you. That's why people who struggle with self-love often feel like they have to prove their worth to others because their brain has been wired to seek dopamine from others rather than from within. Now let's talk about another feel-good chemical, which is serotonin, also known as the mood stabilizer. This is the chemical that makes you feel calm, balanced, and in a good mood. When serotonin levels are healthy, you feel secure about yourself, even when things might not be going your way. But when serotonin is low, things start to shift. Small problems seem big, and even a small mistake can feel like the end of the world. This is because serotonin regulates self-perception, and when there isn't enough of it, you start seeing things in a negative light. Here's also another crazy fact. Serotonin is actually directly affected by what you eat. It is actually produced from an amino acid called tryptophan, which comes from food. So if you're consistently feeling down, unmotivated, and like you're not good enough, it might not be just in your head. It could be your brain chemistry is working against you. Low serotonin is also one of the main reasons why people who struggle with self-love also struggle with anxiety and overthinking. Then we finally have the oxytocin, which is the bonding and the connection chemical. This is usually linked to relationships because it releases when you cuddle or when you hug someone or you feel close to someone else. But what most people don't realize is that oxytocin is equally important for self-love. When your brain releases enough oxytocin, you feel secure and safe within yourself and with others. This chemical helps you be kind to yourself rather than beating yourself up every day. And if your brain is deprived of oxytocin, self-love starts to feel unnatural and something that's even impossible. This is why some people also feel disconnected from themselves and feel like no matter how much they try, they can't seem to love themselves. Without oxytocin, your brain stays in the stress response, making it harder to feel the feelings of love even from within. But apart from these three neurotransmitters, they're not the only ones that regulate self-love. Your brain structure has a huge role in it as well. The ventral striatum, also known as the reward center of our brain, lights up when we feel loved and valued from ourselves or from others. Then there's the prefrontal cortex that controls our self-perception or how we speak to ourselves in our own heads. And finally, we have the amygdala, which processes fears, emotions, and rejection. When your brain is deprived of self-love, your amygdala becomes overreactive, making you more likely to hold on to rejection and self-criticism. This is why in your brain, the negative voice seems to be louder than the positive one, because your brain is wired to hold on to rejection and self-criticism more than self-acceptance. And here's the most fascinating part, that both romantic relationships and self-love activate the same brain circuits. The same part of the brain that light up when you love someone else also light up when you practice self-love. This means that when you practice self-love, your brain treats it in the same way as it would if you were in a deeply loving relationship. But when self-love is missing, your brain registers it also the same way as it would a rejection or a breakup. This is why people who often struggle with self-love also feel lonely and disconnected even when they have a lot of people around. So the brain basically doesn't care where the love comes from. It only cares whether love is present or absent. And here's the great news. Because the brain is neuroplastic, it can change. You can rewire the circuits of your brain and create lasting, strong self-love, even if you've never felt it before. But now you may ask me that if self-love is something we can create, Why does it feel so difficult? Why do so many of us default to self-doubt, self-criticism, and harsh inner dialogue? And the answer lies in how your brain has been wired so far through your past experiences, conditioning, and subconscious beliefs that make you see yourself the way you do. So now let's get deeper into this. Why do we become our own worst enemies? And how can we break from this cycle? Let's start by talking about something that shapes it from the beginning, which is our inner dialogue. Because here's the thing, you weren't born doubting yourself. No baby comes into the world thinking that I'm not lovable and I need to prove my self-worth. These thoughts and this inner voice was created. And most of the time it was created even before you realized it was. From the moment we are born, our brain is always absorbing information, especially about love, security, and self-worth. And as babies, we're completely dependent on our caregivers, and so the way they respond to love and security also forms the basis of how we see love and security. And this is where the attachment styles also come in. If you had secure, consistent, and loving caregivers, and people who made you feel safe, nurtured, and accepted you for who you are, your brain learned, I'm worthy of love, I don't have to prove myself to be accepted. And love and safety are always available to me. But if love was conditional and there were caregivers who were unavailable, inconsistent, and made you feel like you had to do certain things to gain their love, your brain learned something completely different. It wired patterns like, I need to be perfect to be loved, I need to put others first or else I'll be abandoned, and love isn't safe, I need to protect myself. And these things don't just stay in childhood, they also become part of our inner dialogue as adults. The way your parents or even teachers and friends spoke to you in your childhood becomes a way that you also talk to yourself. If you were constantly criticized, compared, and told that you're not good enough, then your brain has ultimately registered those things as truths. Your brain stored those messages as truths, and over time, it became your automatic thoughts or things you believe without even questioning. This is where the default mode network or DMN comes in. Think of DMN as the autopilot of your brain, the part of your brain that keeps on playing past memories, subconscious thoughts on loop. If you've ever caught yourself thinking things like, I'm not good enough, or I can't do certain things without even wanting to, that's your DMN at work. It's actually repeating stories your brain picked up years ago and trying to reinforce them as facts. And the reason that it is so hard to break from that is because the brain naturally is drawn to what is familiar than what is uncomfortable or a change. This is the brain's survival mechanism because as human beings, we are wired to seek familiarity because familiarity often means safety. Even if those thoughts are toxic, your brain will hold on to them because it feels familiar. So if negative self-talk was something that you grew up with, whether from family, school, or friends, it is what has now become a neural pathway. And your brain tends to default to those thoughts because that is what it already knows. This is why breaking away from self-criticism seems so hard because it's not just about speaking positive things, but about actually rewiring your brain to receive self-love. And the good news is that that is completely possible. Just like your brain was wired to believe self-doubt, it can be rewired again to receive self-love. But rewiring your brain doesn't happen overnight. It's not just about being positive, but about creating real science-backed habits that reshape your brain's default system. Just like self-doubt was wired into your brain through regular repetitive patterns, self-love also needs to be practiced consistently on a daily basis so that it becomes your second nature. So now let's talk about how to exactly do that, the daily rituals that will help you rewire your brain for self-love. With neuroplasticity, your brain is always changing, meaning you can shape your self-perception through daily practices. And here I want to emphasize that it is daily habits and daily practices, not just a single realization or a single act of self-care that will rewire your brain for self-love. And the reasons why habits matter so much is because the neurons in our brain that fire together wire together. What this means is the more you repeat a thought or an action, the stronger that neural pathway in your brain gets. So if you've spent years engaging in negative self-talk, your brain will go to that default setting unless you create a new neural pathway of self-love, self-acceptance, and self-appreciation. And the best way to do this is through repetitive, science-backed habits that regulate your brain chemistry from inside out. So let's start by talking about your morning routine first, because that is the best time for rewiring your brain. When you wake up, your cortisol or the stress hormone is already at its peak, meaning that your brain is already on high alert. If the first thing that you do when you wake up is pick your phone, check social media, or worry about your to-do list, then you're training your brain to associate waking up with stress, comparison, and external validation. Instead, the goal is to go for dopamine and serotonin producing habits that makes your brain feel rewarded and secure internally. And one of the simplest way to do this is through a practice called mirror talk. Now I know that this may feel weird at first, but stay with me because this is also backed by neuroscience. Studies reveal that when we talk positively about ourselves, it activates the prefrontal cortex in our brain. This is again the part of the brain that is responsible for regulating our self-perception or how we view ourselves. This means that even if you don't believe the positive words at first, repeating them on a regular basis will create a new neural pathway. So every morning, look at yourself in the mirror and say at least one kind thing about yourself. It could be as simple as, I'm proud of myself for getting up today and doing this, or I'm proud of myself for learning to be kinder to myself. Your brain will resist it at first, but over time, it will start believing it as the truth. The second morning routine that actually helps rewire your brain is movement. Exercise is one of the most powerful tools that produces serotonin, oxytocin, and dopamine all together. Taking out 5 to 10 minutes, whether it's stretching, walking, or doing any kinds of exercise, actually shifts your brain from a fight or flight mode to emotional stability. And studies also show that exercising does not just only boost your mood, but also enhances your brain's plasticity, meaning that it actually makes your brain easier to absorb new self-perceptions. So instead of picking your phone up first thing in the morning, try moving your body, and it doesn't have to be intense, just consistent. Now let's talk about something that most people don't realize massively impacts our self-love, which is the food we eat. Your gut and your brain are directly connected to each other through the gut-brain axis, which means that the food you eat actually affects your mood, your energy, and your self-worth. Certain foods actually increase your dopamine, serotonin, and oxytocin, which are the same chemicals that improve your confidence, self-worth, and self-love. For serotonin production, you need to eat tryptophan-rich foods like bananas, nuts, eggs, oats, and dark chocolate. Since serotonin is responsible for regulating your mood and emotional resilience, adding these foods into your diet can actually increase your self-acceptance. Then for dopamine, which controls your reward and motivation, think about including foods such as avocados, berries, leafy greens, and proteins like fish and chicken into your diet. And finally, for oxytocin, the bonding chemical, think about including foods such as apple, mushrooms, and watermelons, which help in natural production of this chemical. This is why having a nutrient-dense diet increases your self-love on a nutritional and natural level. Another crucial way to actually rewire self-love, and this is from personal experience, is through therapy. I repeatedly mentioned that if you struggle with self-love, it's not just a mindset issue, but a neural pathway issue. And one of the most crucial ways to actually rewire your brain is through taking cognitive behavioral therapy, also known as the CBT. CBT actually works by identifying your negative thought patterns and replacing it with rational, self-loving beliefs about yourself. Studies also reveal that actually practicing cognitive reframing strengthens your prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain that is responsible for your self-perception and self-worth. Over time, this will make self-love the default in your brain and not self-doubt. Finally, let's talk about your night routine, because the things that you focus on before you sleep or the things you think about actually gets registered in your subconscious mind. If you go to bed overthinking, comparing yourself to others on social media, or even dwelling on what went wrong, your brain will stick to these thoughts and strengthen them while you're sleeping. Instead, one of the most powerful ways to actually rewire your brain while you're sleeping is to end your day with gratitude and self-reflection. Studies reveal that actually practicing gratitude towards the end of the day strengthens your ventral stratum, or the reward center in your brain, and leads to production of dopamine and serotonin. So before you sleep, just take out 2 minutes and think about one thing that you were proud of achieving that day. It doesn't have to be something too huge. It could be as simple as, I set a boundary today, or I took care of myself even when I didn't feel like it. This teaches your brain to actually focus on progress over perfection, which is the foundation of self-love. And the final step is to also reduce your phone usage before bed. The blue light from your screen actually reduces melatonin, the hormone that controls sleep, and also overstimulates the dopamine receptors. This makes your brain more likely to compare and also seek external validation. So instead of mindlessly scrolling, try replacing the last 30 to 60 minutes of your day with a screen-free activity. This helps your brain actually reset the dopamine system. And I also have another video where I talk about how you can actually stop doom scrolling and break your social media addiction which I'll also be linking below. So to wrap this up, self-love isn't something that you just end up feeling one day, but something that you train your brain to experience every single day. Through small but powerful habits, you will literally rewire your brain to think, feel, and experience self-love on a daily basis. You're actually training your brain to think that this is the new normal. And over time, you won't have to force it. It will just be who you are. And before you start implementing these steps, please remember that self-love is a process and not a destination. Just like we've spent years being hard on ourselves, self-love also takes time, practice, and patience. But the great news is that you are always in control of your journey. And now I want to hear from you. If anything resonated with you today, drop a comment and let me know what that was. If you're also working on your self-love journey, I would love to hear what's been working for you. I'll be reading and replying to each and every one of you, and your stories also inspire me to create more content that can bring more value to you guys. And if you also want more self-love reminders and behind the scenes moments, do check out my links in the description below, along with my Instagram, where I also post regularly. My videos are based on a lot of research, and I've also added links to a lot of papers in the description below. I'm cheering for you, and I believe in you, and I can't wait to see how your self-love journey unfolds.